Hey guys, welcome back to mock draft season. The Super Bowl is over. We have the entire first round set in stone. So we are going with our first round mock draft, full, all 32 picks with trades as well. And we are going to kick things off with the Titans at number one, if you want to take us there.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and at the moment it's the pre-off season. We don't know any off-season moves that are going to be made. A lot of this is we're projecting. So with the Titans at number one, we have them going with Cam Ward, quarterback out of Miami. And you could say there's not a quarterback worth being picked number one overall in this class, but there's a huge need for the Titans. They cannot go into another season with Will Levis. They have proven that this is not the path that they need to go. They're not going to add BPA and rock with him. Brian Callahan needs to bring in a new guy, and whether it be in offseason or whether it be in the draft. So we have them, building up a team and then drafting a quarterback into that spot. Whereas some people might have them take bridge quarterback and then, get the best player available here. We have them going with, we're going to get a solid roster around a rookie player and hope that it pans out. And they're going to pick their favorite guy here, and we have them going with Cam Ward.
Yeah, and another thing you always got to think about is the money aspect of it, where veteran quarterbacks, even not great ones, are going to be more expensive than your veteran options at other positions. You see guys like Saquon getting paid as low tier receivers, whereas other receivers might be a little more expensive, and quarterbacks are just a whole other level than that. So taking the rookie contract at quarterback is always going to be the smarter idea. Then at number two, we've got the Browns taking Abdul Carter, the edge rusher out of Penn State. Myles Garrett has requested a trade from the Browns. He has said that he wanted to win, and the Browns have been pretty adamant that they won't trade him. But if his goal is to win, I think it's going to be pretty hard for Cleveland to sell him on staying there. So I truly, to the depths of my heart, believe that he has taken his last snap in a Browns jersey. But even if he hasn't, Abdul Carter and Myles Garrett coming off the edge would be terrifying for opposing defenses. So even if he is still there, this is, I think, would be a home run pick to really recreate that Browns defense that we know from the past few years, not necessarily this past season, but before that, the Browns defense was always really strong. Their offense was just kind of lackluster. This is rebuilding that super strong defense starting up front.
Yeah, and with quarterback questions for the Browns, I think getting Myles Garrett to actually take another snap, as you said, is going to be a huge challenge. So if he's out of there, Abdul Carter, it's a big hole to shoe to fill, but I think he's as good as a move you can make towards filling that hole. And then next we've got the Giants picking at number 3, and with Cam Ward already off the board, we're going to stick with what we had in that first mock where we have these quarterbacks flying off the board. And so the Giants are going to go with Shedeur Sanders. We got Shedeur Sanders going at number 3. They are more than quarterback needy. I'd say even more than the Titans, because they actually cut their guy in the middle of the season. And, as long as they don't have a quarterback addressed in the offseason, this is going to be the pick. And so, as we said, there's not really great quarterbacks, and we're not saying that they're worthy of going at 1 and 3, but the needs, as of right now, is definitely there.
Yeah, and you've done a little bit of preliminary research on these quarterbacks, done a little bit of film watching at least on them, and you've said, because this quarterback class has kind of been compared to the 2022 class with Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis, and there really wasn't good talent there. You've said that doesn't seem to be that bad. Yeah. I would assume you're standing by that here with this pick.
Yes, I presume as long as the organizations don't fail these two quarterbacks, they are both going to be better than Kenny Pickett. And okay. Kenny Pickett was the top guy in that draft. So, I definitely not as bad of a class as that year was.
Okay. And then here at pick 4, we've got the Patriots taking Travis Hunter out of Colorado. They really need a jump start. They need a high upside guy in the offense. And I think if there's any place that would be able to effectively use him at both receiver and cornerback, it's somewhere with a really good CB1 already, which the Patriots have in Christian Gonzalez. Sorry, spaced for a minute. So if a team picks Travis as a corner this high and they don't have a DB1 or a CB1, they're expecting him to line up across from the best receivers in the league and then a couple plays later go cover or go play against the best cornerbacks in the league. And that's just not something that you can do. But I think on the Patriots, you can kind of have him maybe play nickel, maybe just be like just a sub in every now and then on defense just for a spark. and then really utilize his talents on offense, on the offensive side of the ball. And I think, like I said, if anywhere could do it, it's the Patriots with the needs that they have, but also the solidified CB1 that they have in Christian Gonzalez.
Yeah, and then there's also the inverse to consider, where you can use him as, your third wide receiver, and let's say they, don't run a lot of 3 wide receiver or 4 wide receiver, whatever that, metric is to watch his reps, and you go ahead and you slot him in, and he's a spark plug there, and then you actually have him play every down of defense, and they could go either way with him because of the talent he has, and with a team that definitely just needs talent in it, I think the fact that Hunter slips to you at 4 is like a godsend.
Absolutely.
And then we move on to pick number 5. We have the Jaguars here, and I feel like this is going to be the first one that's a little questionable. I think this is a little early in some people's eyes, but we have the second cornerback coming off the board, and we have Will Johnson out of Michigan going to the Jaguars. Arguably, this is the team's biggest need. They tried to address it last year in the offseason, not the draft, but in the offseason, and they didn't really, hit with their selections, their signings there. They still ranked 32nd in pass defense this year, and while they have other needs, they could add offensive line to suit the offensive-minded head coach that they just got. I think they just really, this is such a bleeding gash. You got to at least put some bandage on it, and this bandage is going to be Will Johnson.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then with pick number 6, we have the Raiders, Pete Carroll at the helm. We touched on it before, and man, we love it even more. We have Ashton Jeanty, running back out of Boise State, going to the Raiders. This is just classic hard-nosed football from Pete Carroll. This is the pick. If you want to really just have such cohesion on offense, and they don't have a quarterback right now, and they don't have one in this mock draft because there's already 2 off the board. This is the move to make. You go ahead, you get Ashton Jeanty, and he is going to be your offense for these first few years of his career. And that's perfectly fine for you if you're Pete Carroll, because this is the way you've ran it before. And with Chip Kelly also at the helm of the offense, this is the perfect, storm that's arising for the Raiders to start this new regime under Pete Carroll. And then if you really want to know more about Ashton Jeanty and him as a prospect, tune in next week. I have the Ashton Jeanty scouting report dropping the Friday after this video's release.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we said last time, the fastest way to make an offensive identity is to take Ashton Jeanty, because he is now your offensive identity. Congrats. You don't have to pick 5 people to get a good passing offense. It's him, and he's done. And then at pick 7, we've got the Jets going with Will Campbell, the offensive tackle out of LSU. He may project as a guard. He may project as a tackle. Either way, he's a really good prospect, and the Jets need offensive line help bad. They tried to address that need last offseason with the free agency signings and the draft with, I think it was Fuaga, right, that went to them.
I think Fuaga was Saints, but they got one of the guys.
Right. It was...
was it Olu?
Yeah, it was Olu.
I think they got Olu.
Yeah, my bad. So they tried to address it last offseason. Still a major problem. And with the split with Aaron Rodgers, there's kind of a pretty big opening for quarterback as well, if you want to go that way. But again, here, same with the Raiders. Top 2 quarterbacks off the board. We really don't want to reach on someone like Jalen Miller or Jackson Dart here in the top 10. Don't feel like they're that level of prospect. So we'll go with Will Campbell, a centerpiece for the offensive line, and someone who is definitely going to be a good player no matter where he plays.
Yeah, and then, with the new head coach for the Jets, I think Aaron Glenn knows the importance of having a strong offensive line to really be the driving force of your offense. He saw it work in Detroit, and I think that's, even more so going to lean him this way. We're like, okay, we got to build the O-line before we put a quarterback in behind it, because we can't just get our quarterback out there getting killed every play.
Definitely.
And then at pick number 8, we have the Panthers, and we have them selecting Mason Graham, the tackle out of Michigan. So this one also a little bit of a defense I'm running here, but this is a team that needs some D-line help. They were bottom 3 in pass rush, they were bottom 3 in run stopping, and while you could go ahead and look at this and be like, okay, we'll take the second edge off the board and fill the void of Brian Burns, I feel like adding Mason Graham, he's still here. You add him in, and he's adding that run stop, and he's adding some of the pass rush. He's adding more run stop than an edge rusher would. So he's helping in both of those facets. Whereas if you just got a pure outside the tackle edge rusher, they're really not going to be a great run stopper. And you do need other pieces. We have Bryce finally coming into his own, it feels like, and you could add some offensive pieces there. But at pick 8, personally, I just prefer adding to that really, really weak defense.
Yeah, and another thing is the value, because I feel like Mason Graham's a guy where if he went top 5, I wouldn't even be shocked. Like, I'm almost expecting him to go top 5. But if the Panthers are sitting here at 8 and they see this guy who I believe at least is going to be a perennial Pro Bowler, multi-time All-Pro at D tackle, you can't pass that up, especially with a weaker defense like the Panthers have. But here at 9, we've got the Saints taking Jalen Walker, the linebacker edge rusher out of Georgia. He's a really intriguing prospect. He's really good at both off-ball and at the edge rush position, and the Saints kind of need a jump start on the defense, and a versatile weapon, if you will, for that defense with Jalen Walker, I think would be a really good pick for them here. He's really climbing up a lot of people's boards, and he's, I think entering this draft cycle, he was probably sitting around late first, maybe early second round pick, but I've seen him go as high as Panthers, if not like Raiders. I think I saw somebody have them take him at 6. And I think even this is a little high for me on a guy that's projecting as an edge rusher, not necessarily has the production as an edge rusher, but still just a really nice prospect that I'm pretty excited to see how he plays in the NFL. You just kind of have to hope that there's some good defensive coordinator play that utilizes his talents.
Yeah, as that versatile weapon. This is definitely a player, like as you mentioned, he's shooting up boards. He's kind of shooting up our collective board, really spearheaded by you, because I just haven't had enough time to get around to watching him when I've got the other scouting reports I'm doing. But moving on to pick number 10, we have the Bears here, and it feels like Ashton Jeanty is a lot of picks here. Well, he's off the board, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to have them take Tyler Booker, interior offensive lineman out of Alabama. They've added to their offensive line in the past few years, but they did it at the outside, at the tackle position. And now it's time to really look on the interior, the weakest part of it from this past season. And they're going to go ahead and they're going to take the first one off the board and just add a really talented offensive front in front of Caleb Williams. You go ahead, you slot him in wherever you need him, and then you have the tackles playing as they have been. And Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson at the helm, this is even scarier than they were last year, because last year it was like, he's going to be better than Justin Fields was because Justin Fields made the O-line look bad. Well, then the O-line was bad, and this is helping fix that.
Yeah, going interior offensive line here is a bit early, but again, it's such a strong need for them, and the mindset of Ben Johnson coming from a place like Detroit definitely leans towards building up those trenches, and Tyler Booker is a very good offensive line prospect, and I expect him to go well within the first round. But I will say, last year, Jackson Powers Johnson was a guy that I really expected to go really, really highly, and he just kind of slipped. He was a second round pick. So it may be a bit of a overprojection, but I still like having the Bears address their main need, even if it's not the, I guess, most realistic option for a top 10 pick, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's a position that isn't valued as highly to be a top 10 pick, but here we are. It's their most needed position, prior to any offseason moves. So that's where we have them picking. And then at pick 11, we have the 49ers going with Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas. Just kind of offensive line is what we're at right now for him, because they could put him behind Trent Williams, succession plan, let him sit for a year, even shift him inside if they need, a starter. If anybody goes down, you go ahead and slot him in. Or it could be, we're going to go ahead, we're going to shift him inside immediately. He's going to be an immediate starter, and we could flex him out later in his career, depending on Trent Williams and what happens with him. So whether or not he's a guard or a tackle in the league, he could very well be drafted here regardless, because they need to put people on that O-line to protect Brock Purdy, who is soon to be getting paid a lot of money from them.
Then at number 12 here, we have the Cowboys, and this is going to be our first trade of the mock. We have the Bengals trading up with the Cowboys to take Tet McMillan, wide receiver out of Arizona. With him slipping and us projecting T. Higgins to leave in free agency, this move gives Tet a really good place to go. They have a strong offense, a strong quarterback, and it also gives the Bengals someone that they already have a role built out for. He would just slot right into the T. Higgins role. They really wouldn't need to change much. I think he's probably a little bit more athletic than T. Higgins. He's bigger, but skinnier. So I would just project a little faster. So maybe some slight differences, but ultimately, I mean, you slot him in that T. Higgins role, and he's going to be a good prospect for them. And I am definitely pretty high on him. Maybe not as high as like Patriots taking him at 4, but he's going to be a good receiver in the league. And this is obviously projecting that T. Higgins walks and finds a deal in free agency. You really want to have a rookie deal wide receiver 2 with this talent level rather than paying your wide receiver 1 an absurd amount of money in Jamar Chase, then your wide receiver 2 an absurd amount of money in T. Higgins, because he can get wide receiver 1 money, and then you're also paying Joe Burrow, and your defense is the thing that really needs the money spent on it. I don't see them really extending T. Higgins here unless they can get a really big discount on him, which I don't see happening.
Yeah, and then, if you're thinking from the Cowboys' perspective, like, okay, well, Tet's here, why not take Tet? Because they do have a little bit of a scarcity in the wide receiver room behind CD. This is one of those situations where it is just going to be the Bengals are offering them, and the Cowboys, they have other needs. A wide receiver here, while nice, would also kind of be a luxury pick. So they go ahead and they take the trade that the Bengals offer, which I imagine would be a pretty lucrative one, moving up for Tet to fill a hole.
Yeah, and then the other thing there is the Cowboys. Every mock has them taking Jeanty. It's hard to find a mock draft that doesn't have Jeanty going to the Cowboys. So he doesn't make it there. They see the value in trading back over taking whoever else they might want. But at 13, we've got the Dolphins taking Malachi Starks, safety out of Georgia. Starks is one of those guys that could go from like bordering on a top 10 pick or being a top 10 pick to completely slipping out of the first round like we saw Brian Branch do, just because of the different positional values, the different values that different teams have on safeties. But I am all for a safety resurgence. The Lions built their strong secondary basically just off having 2 good safeties, and then their corners were able to go out there. But it's really the safeties running the show there. And then Kyle Hamilton has really helped transform the Ravens defense. And I think Malachi Starks can have a similar impact on the Dolphins defense to kind of give them help wherever they need it and jumpstart that defense back to being a quality unit with Jalen Ramsey still there and with their offense hopefully clicking with a full season of Tua next year.
Yeah, it's always hard trying to have safeties go early in a mock, but we both are big fans of safeties. I mean, you mentioned the Lions duo that we have, and so we actually see the value in safeties, whereas I feel a lot of people don't in their mocks. So we actually have one going top 16, which to many would be a shock. But for us, it's just kind of like a continuation of how we have perceived safeties in the draft. And then at pick 14, we have the Colts. And while they kind of are in this weird limbo of like, we know they have talent because they've shown it, but they aren't playing up to expectations, we have them going with Tyler Warren, tight end out of Penn State. It's kind of a luxury pick. Tight end isn't a huge, ask anyone in a fantasy league. It's not a big thing to target. And yet here we have the Colts going top 16 at 14, a tight end. And that is just because it is the biggest hole on their offense. They haven't had a productive tight end on their offense. And you want to give a safety blanket to your quarterback. He's still on his rookie deal. He's still needing to kind of find himself because he hasn't played a lot in the NFL due to injury. So while the head coach, he's from Philly, he was used to having Goddard be the safety blanket for Jalen Hurts. I would imagine he tries to do the same thing with Anthony Richardson. He gets him a safety blanket at tight end, and he really looks for the offense to make a leap this year to know, is Anthony Richardson going to be our guy?
Yeah, and then at 15, we've got the Falcons taking Mike Green, the edge rusher out of Marshall. He measured in at the Senior Bowl over 250. He added 15 pounds from what he measured in at the start of the year. And then he also put Josh Connerly, the tackle out of Oregon, on his ass during the one-on-ones for edges and tackles. And that really just skyrocketed him up my board. He was already pretty high on some people's boards. And the Falcons need any semblance of a defense. They tried to kind of patch it over with Matt Judon from the Patriots. Thanks for the 3rd-round pick, by the way. And that didn't work. So kind of taking the best player available, Mike Green, who could end up being the best edge rusher in the class, but probably won't be because of Abdul Carter. But he could be an extremely good player, getting him at 15 and getting somebody on defense, which we've been saying for a very long time that they really, really, and I mean really need to do that. So I like the pick for them here.
Yeah, it's drafting where you have the biggest need. We've done it for a lot of these teams thus far. We're doing it again with the Falcons here. On to pick 16, we have the Cardinals here, and we have them going with Jahdae Barron. At least I presume that's how you say his name. Cornerback out of Texas. We have long favored defensive selections for the Cardinals, and we saw them go with that last draft, getting Darius, is it Robinson? I think that's his last name.
Yes. Yeah.
A Missouri guy. And, I really think that they're going to keep adding on to that defense with the defensive-minded head coach that they have. And this would be a great cornerstone at corner for this new regime. They added to the offense early in the draft last year. And while you could add more to that offense, I like the addition to the defense more here.
Yeah, value's definitely higher on the defense. And then at 17, this is where the Bengals were before their trade up, but now this is where the Cowboys sit. And we've got the Cowboys taking Armand Membu, the offensive tackle out of Mizzou. Their offensive line ranked 24th in pass block win rate last year. If they want to have a strong passing attack like they did a couple years ago, they need to build up their trenches. They need to protect Dak and keep him from getting injured. Membu is the preferred pick, assuming they take issue with Josh Simmons' injury, limiting their ability to see him practicing leading up to the draft, which I think could be a bigger factor on him than most people think. He's a very talented tackle, but if you as a team are just looking at tape and you have no way of actually seeing him in motion in drills that you're used to watching prospects do, I think it could kind of lead you to, well, this guy looks pretty good, so we'll kind of opt to the guy that we have a little bit more confidence in. And injuries are also tough to project for the worries about injury history and the worries about continued injury complications or anything like that. So
Yeah.
Josh Simmons, probably the better tackle, but we'll go with the healthier Membu out of Missouri.
Yeah, with injuries, you never know what player you're going to be getting after an injury. And then, as you said, you're seeing these guys do drills in front of you, and that one that you can't see is just out of sight, out of mind, slipping down your mental board, and other people are moving up as you see them do these drills. And then at pick 18, we have the Seahawks sitting here, and with Membu going out and ahead of them, and with, I think a very nice situation for the Seahawks being presented to them. We have them trading with the Broncos. So they're falling back just 2 picks, and the Broncos are jumping the Buccaneers. And with that jump, the Broncos will be selecting Matthew Golden, wide receiver out of Texas. They are trading up to jump the Bucs because right now, as we're projecting it, the Bucs will they will have a void at wide receiver 2 on the outside. And Matthew Golden is really the last good outside wide receiver we have in this mock draft. And so you go ahead and you get a good, solid second option for Bo Nix. Moving into his second year after having a very productive rookie season, you add more weapons to that room, and you just need to pay a little extra to make this jump to make sure you get your guy instead of sitting at 20 and possibly seeing the last outside wide receiver go.
Yeah, and then the Buccaneers, obviously, they don't love that pick that just happened ahead of them. They just lost out on Matthew Golden. But they're going to go ahead and take a nice consolation prize of Mykel Williams, the edge rusher out of Georgia. The Bucs ranked second to last in run stop win rate. They were pretty decent in pass rush win rate, but they could use some retooling of the front 7. Mykel falls nicely to them here at 19 as a guy that can help shore up any issues with their D-line. And I like believing in Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, but he's only had 15 career sacks in 4 seasons, never more than 4 in a season, I think. And that just doesn't strike me as a great edge rusher. It's someone I would like to see replaced, and if they can get a guy like Mykel to fall to them, I think they could kind of look to move away from the Joe Tryon era in Tampa.
Yeah, and then we got the Seahawks sitting here after their trade back, and nice, pretty risk-free trade back, and they are able to get somebody that we would have had them draft at 18, and that is Donovan Jackson, the guard out of Ohio State. It's a safe pick because this is something, once again, like the Falcons, we've long highlighted as a need for the Seahawks. And while it's not going to be the first, they're not having their pick of the litter at interior offensive linemen, they're able to get a little bit of that reward back with that trade back and still get the guy that they would have taken at pick 18, which, is a no-brainer in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And Donovan Jackson, he's the guy that bumped out to tackle for Ohio State when they needed it due to Josh Simmons' injury. And he's actually been pretty decent at tackle as well. So if the Seahawks decide, hey, you're a pretty good tackle, you measure in pretty well as a tackle, your arms are long enough, and we'd like to play you there, it kind of gives them that flexibility It's the same thing we were talking about last draft cycle when we had them taking a couple different guys um, at in the first round, and then they ultimately didn't. But this time they go ahead and they take the offensive line help where they really need it.
Yep. And then at pick 21, we have the Steelers here, and the Steelers they're in a weird limbo right now because right now they got no quarterback under contract and they got no running back under contract, and it's a lot of question marks on the offense. However, offseason, we're projecting they're not going to head into the draft without a quarterback and a running back. They're probably going to retain some people from the roster and move into the draft with less needs on the offense. And so they're going to go ahead and add to the defense with cornerback Trey Amos out of Ole Miss. I think pairing Joey Porter Jr. up with another young corner would set them up for the future as the core of the defense that they really had a strong defense for many years. They're really aging out. They're losing a lot of their real mainstay guys, and they will be just, needing to replace them sooner than later. So they're going to go ahead and do it sooner with Trey Amos adding to that DB room.
Yeah, then at 22, we've got the Chargers. They see Trey Amos come off the board. They're like, hey, we kind of need corners as well. They actually, have 4 cornerbacks set to depart to free agency. Both their starters, one of their backups, and their Elijah Molden, who's playing free safety for them. But, he's a quality DB there. And so we have them taking Siobhan Ravel, the cornerback out of Eastern Carolina. So regardless of who the Chargers decide to keep, I think that they would love to add this guy. I was super high on Tariq Woolen in his draft class. That was partially because I go to UTSA, so of course I have to be high on the UTSA guy. But also I just really liked the, super tall, super lengthy, super athletic corner, and that's exactly what Ravel is. There's not a whole ton of tape on him. He doesn't have a whole lot of starts, but the potential is so high there, and I think Jim Harbaugh is the guy to unlock that potential, and so I like seeing them take him here at 22.
Yeah, it's definitely like he builds the trenches and he builds the defense. And this past season, they had some good play from the defense. Could be better. I think they're going to let some of those cornerbacks walk so that way they can have a void here and add this competition in Ravel.
Yeah, they had a pretty good defense last year. I liked them, but yeah, retool, be stronger. Then at 23, we've got the Packers taking Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver out of Ohio State. They have such a strange wide receiver room as it is. There's just a bunch of guys who could go off any given week, but there's no dominant wide receiver 1 there. Josh Jacobs himself said that they need a wide receiver 1. My dad, shout out to him, Packers fan, he's big on them taking a receiver. And Egbuka isn't like the stereotypical big dominant wide receiver 1 type, but he is a wide receiver 1. He can be the focal point of an offense. He can be a reliable guy, and he will be a consistent target for Jordan Love and a piece to take this Packers offense to the next level, which is what they need in such a strong division of the NFC North.
Yeah, it's, without being an outside wide receiver, you can still be a wide receiver 1 in an offense. Just look at the Lions in division. Yeah. And then speaking of in division, we have the Vikings picking up next, and we have the Vikings selecting Benjamin Morrison, cornerback out of Notre Dame. We did see a little run of cornerbacks go just a few picks before Egbuka. So we're going to go ahead and have the Vikings also make an addition to theirs. They had a lot of quality play from their corners. A lot of them are pending free agency. A lot of them are a little older. I'm looking at you, Stephen Gilmore. So I have them adding another corner to the room, probably filling the void of some of them departing.
Then at 25, we have the Texans. They love the look of Josh Simmons sitting here at offensive tackle. However, you know who loves that look more? The Patriots, baby. They are going to send a Godfather offer for the 25th pick, trade up with the Texans, and take Josh Simmons, offensive tackle out of Ohio State. They addressed their need for a weapon with the 4th pick. That also helped them out on defense with a DB. I assume they'll build some of the trenches in free agency and maybe even add a receiver as well. Now, Josh Simmons slipping this far, they definitely are going to make a call to the Texans about a trade up and grab one of the most intriguing offensive line prospects in this class. He could be the best tackle in the entire class. That is the hype that is around him. It is just the injury that's really throwing him down boards. And I think if there is a situation or a series of events that leads to him falling past 20, we could really see a team like the Patriots who really, really and I cannot stress this enough, really need to build the trenches, want to move up and take this centerpiece. They, just to kind of expand on their issues, they were the second worst in pass block win rate and the worst in run block win rate. So definitely the worst offensive line in football this past season, and Simmons is going to be the cornerstone in this scenario.
Yeah, and while the Texans, you kind of addressed it, the Texans are not without their own offensive line needs. As you said, the Patriots would be sending man, I can't remember the old saying I was about to pull out, but the whole shebang, we'll say. They're sending everything, whole kit and caboodle. For the saying I was looking for was something about an ox and a wagon. I don't know. Basically,
sounds familiar.
They're sending a lot of picks, in exchange for this. It's not just going to be, oh, we're going to take this as a, freebie. We're just going to move down for free. No, they're getting their worth out of this. And then at pick 26, we have the Rams. Luther Burden III is still on the board, and that's where we have them going. The wide receiver out of Mizzou. Perfect Cooper Kupp replacement with him soon to be traded in the offseason from the Rams. They're going to get a slot guy who falls to 26. This sounds perfect for them. With Ibuka, he could have also been a pick here if he slipped, but he didn't. So we've got Luther Burden going to perfectly slot into that Cooper Kupp role, even though Puka Nacua kind of can perfectly slot into that role and did. Why not do it again?
Yeah, I think Puka is better suited as an outside guy, and Kupp is definitely more that slot guy. Puka, is a little bit of a bigger receiver. Luther Burden is just going to be, hey, we had Cooper Kupp running this. Can you do it? Cool. All right. Slotting right into that role. Kind of like the Tet to the Bengals, where it's just you're slotting exactly into a role that we already have in the offense that we already rely on. But here at 27, we've got the Ravens taking Ariante Ursary, offensive tackle out of Minnesota. The Ravens, barring a deal that really puts them in a tough position cap-wise, are set to lose Ronnie Stanley. And I don't think pick 27 is a great place to get a cornerstone franchise left tackle, but Ursary is a massive people mover, and he would be a big impact in the run game. And Todd Monken showed that he would like to have a pretty good run game in this first season as the Ravens offensive coordinator with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson running the ball. And I think this is probably the best fit for Ursary, and also probably the best fit for the Ravens to kind of replace Ronnie Stanley or shift somebody over and throw Ursary at the right side if they want to get some better run blocking on the right side. But I'm pretty sure that they'll let Stanley walk just because their cap space isn't perfect, and replacing him again won't be easy, but I think they can try it here.
Yeah, it's they have other needs, yes, and is this as you said the best place to take that tackle? No, but you can't take a tackle any other time. You can't pay one in off season, so this is where you have to really slot in a tackle. This is where we're slotting in our tackle at pick 27. And then at pick 28, we have the Lions, and I have the Lions selecting James Pierce Jr., the edge out of Tennessee. They could go many directions. We do have pending free agents at, guard, at corner. And I've seen these be things mocked, but at the end of the day, we've been going years without a true guy alongside Aiden Hutchinson. And we saw Aiden Hutchinson have such a start to the season last season before his injury, that you add another threat on that defensive line, and there is no ceiling for Aiden Hutchinson in this new defense. And, Aaron Glenn loved to run some man coverage, and you would love to have effective edges in that same scheme. With Kelvin Shepherd, he's an in-house upgrade or promotion. I imagine it's going to be a similar scheme there, not going to completely shift everything over, considering that they built the roster to fit that scheme. So I think James Pierce Jr., you add another productive edge rusher alongside Aiden Hutchinson, and this is a dangerous duo.
Yeah, and James Pierce falling to them is just so perfect for you and for the Lions. But at 29, we have the Commanders taking Jihad Campbell, linebacker out of Alabama. The Commanders were kind of the shocker of the season. They made it a lot further than anybody expected them to. Obviously, in the NFC Championship, nobody had them there. But I think just making the playoffs was enough of a shock to me, where I was like, oh my God. Jaden Daniels showed very few weaknesses. Their offense was very efficient. They punted very few times. They had some of the most impressive new records of they didn't punt once this entire game, or they didn't punt once in the past 3 games. And it's just like, you got Tress Way. He's a pretty good punter. Get some work out of it. But I think the defense is obviously the place to target. The team is fairly young, even if Jaden Daniels is an older rookie. He's still a younger quarterback. So I think getting younger at your core is definitely the way to go. And so a move away from Bobby Wagner at linebacker towards a possible young star is in order, and Jihad Campbell fits that mold perfectly.
Yeah.
Then at pick 30, we have the Bills taking Nick Scourton, edge out of Texas A&M. He's just simply the best pick available on the D-line. They showed strengths throughout the year on D-line. They could use some better receivers, so this isn't like their biggest need, but this just isn't the place to take a receiver. It'd be a bit of a reach. You could get some value, you can get some good players, but it wouldn't be the best value here at pick 30. And the Bills, they ranked top 6 in both pass rush win rate as well as run stop win rate, so there are probably positions of greater need. Like I said, receiver, definitely cornerback, but again, the value here with Scourton is much, much better than the value of taking any of the remaining receiver or cornerback prospects in the first round.
Yeah, we've had all of the other positions kind of fly off the board a little heavy. That's how James Pierce made it to 28 for the Lions, and that's how Scourton is here for the Bills to go ahead and scoop up. And then at pick 31, the Super Bowl losers, the Chiefs. Yep, there it is. Okay,
Sorry.
The Chiefs, we have them selecting Gray Zabel, the guard out of NDSU. With Trey Smith set to hit free agency or get a massive bag that I'm not sure the Chiefs can afford, barring any major retirements. As of now, there has been no major retirements, and they have yet to enter offseason in negotiations with Trey Smith, but we're projecting he's going to leave, and they're going to go ahead and need to find a way to address that need at pick 31. And I think Zabel's a great move to do so. He's shown that he can be a versatile offensive lineman. So, while you could have him at guard and then, keep Thuney outside and have him adjust to being there, you could also have Zabel straight on the outside and leave him there. He's tried and true. He's tested at every position. I think you just get this guy. He's versatile. You can add whoever else you want. He will be able to fill in any role as well as you need to move someone over to left tackle.
Yeah, another NDSU guy going first round. It's not something that we haven't seen before, but this guy, I'm pretty high on him. I've seen a lot of hype surrounding him, and after the Senior Bowl, especially where he kind of played center and both guards pretty well in their 5v4 drills. But another thing that has to do with the Trey Smith deal, if there is one from the Chiefs, is that Mahomes' contract, his cap hit it skyrockets this year. I think it's 66 million in the next year, where it's 22 this year. So just like an absurd skyrocketing from that huge deal that he signed a couple years back, that is really going to restrict their ability to retain players at positions that I wouldn't necessarily consider top tier, if that makes sense. Where guard is, you can slot in a Mekhi Becton, a failed tackle. You can slot in somebody like that at guard and hope to have some success, like the Eagles have. Speaking of, we have them taking Shamar Stewart, the D-end out of Texas A&M at pick 32, which means that Scourton and Shamar go within 2 picks of each other, the Texas A&M teammates. How poetic. The Eagles just proved that they're probably the most complete roster in the league, but they are set to lose some big names on the defense, assuming they can't afford expensive contracts for all of their breakout stars this year. Zach Bond, Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, all made a huge impact in the Super Bowl, all pending free agents. So I assume they're probably going to try to retain Bond just because of how big of an impact he had. They'd probably let Sweat and Williams go because of their depth at D-tackle and the ability to add a D-end like Shamar Stewart through the draft. There is a lot of growing hype around Shamar, and I really wouldn't be surprised to hear his name called a bit earlier in the first round. But for now, because that's new hype and we've been, operating on old hype, we're going to keep him here at 32 for the Eagles. He would be replacing a Josh Sweat of sorts. And I mean, who knows? Maybe this hype is all smoke and mirrors and we see his name called in the third. Who knows? But yeah, that rounds out the 32nd pick. And do you have anything to add there?
No, I think, we broke down all of these picks, as deeply as we could to make it fit into a video that isn't hours long. But, there's always more information out there. So if you have a certain feeling, if you know something about a player, go ahead and throw it down in the comments. If you're a fan of a certain team and you like the pick, if you don't like the pick, let us know down in the comments, why. And I think we're just now entering this mock season, this draft season. A lot of videos we've got coming out for y'all. I think probably every Friday till the draft, we've got something planned. We're going to be really putting our nose in the dirt and getting after it, just like a certain edge rusher who put Josh Conley on his ass. And with
Shout
that,
out Mike Green, baby. With that,
that is our mock
deuces.
draft. Deuces.
Deuces.